So thank you for the words, Council, and I would like to give the floor to the Minister for Finance, Lands, Sports and Recreation, Citizenship and Multicultural Interests, the Honourable Tony Booty, MLA. As the floor.
Buonasera. I'd like to, of course, commence by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that we meet on, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, pay respects to their elders past, present and emerging. You did such a great job in acknowledging all the VIPs, so I won't repeat that, but I do want to make a special mention of my two parliamentary colleagues, the Honourable Michelle Roberts, the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly, the first woman Speaker of the Legislative Assembly in Western Australia. I think that is a round of applause. I should also note that Michelle's an honorary Italian, and her Italian is far better than mine, and I'm ashamed of that, but her Italian is very good. Also, I'd like to acknowledge my ministerial colleague, the Honourable Rita Saviotti, is somewhere there in the crowd. Hi, Rita. As of course you would know, Rita has a very strong Italian heritage and is very strong in promoting the Italian culture in Western Australia, so it's great to have her here, a fellow Galabresi, but obviously I'll get onto that in a minute. And I'd like to pass on an apology from the Premier, the Honourable Mark McGowan, and also another Italian colleague in Parliament, the Honourable Paul Papalia, who's in Brisbane at a conference at the moment. And I believe the Honourable Dr. Brian Walker, MLC, should be here. Welcome to probably one of your first functions as a member of the Legislative Council. Of course, we're here at a very special day for the nation of Italy, and 2nd of June 1946 was when it became a republic. And it was a pretty close vote, actually, but that was a very historic occasion. And as was mentioned, we are very lucky that we are here celebrating tonight in a social gathering. Of course, that is not possible in many parts of the world, including in parts of Australia, such as Victoria. And we know how COVID took over Italy for the first part of last year. So for people here that have relations in Italy that have suffered as a result of COVID-19, of course, our thoughts with them as our sympathies. This special day for the Italian nation, of course, is also very special for me. I'm the Minister for Multicultural Affairs, and in my 7 or 8 weeks in this position, I've been to many multicultural events, but this is my first event which has an Italian flavour to it, and of course, of my Italian origins, it's very, very special. The Italian community in West Australia is very significant, has a long history, and has been significant in many areas such as politics, academia, science and business and sport and other activities. In regards to politics, it's interesting that until about 3 or 4 years ago, I'm not sure what the figures are now, there was more politicians in Australian parliaments, federal and state, from an Italian background than any other overseas origins, so that's quite a significance. Some of you may think that's not good, but I think it's not bad. But we all come to this tonight, if you come from an Italian background, with different stories, how we became to live here and be here tonight. Some of those stories deal with hardship, struggles, and being not accepted in Australia when we first came. When I say that, of course, I'm talking about my ancestry, not myself, as I was born here. But if Rita was up here, she would be able to tell you the story of her family arriving in Australia and the experiences that she has experienced. But as I have the floor, I'm going to tell you about my life story and in regards to my parents. So my grandfather on my mother's side came out from Della in the 1920s. He was already married, had a child that he left in Italy. This is familiar during that period. He came and spent 10 years in Australia before he went back, collected his wife and son and came to Australia, and my mother was born here in 1935 in Collie, which is where I was born, but they lived in Yarloop and Harvey, which had a very strong Italian contingent, and obviously during the Second World War, many Italians were interned down in the Harvey region and in Rottnest Island. But many of the farmers actually were protesting because the Italians were very good workers and they lost that supply of labour. When my grandfather came out from Italy, he came with his cousin. His cousin said it was too hot. He went back to Italy and he emigrated to Canada. And so all my mum's family actually live in Canada. My father arrived from Tuscany in 1951 as a 21-year-old without speaking a word of English. Was under the program that he was on. He had to spend 2 years working in the forestry and dwelling up. Then met my mother in Pinjarra, and then they went to Collie and had 4 children and raised a family and moved to Perth eventually to live in Armidale. But the stories I remember my father telling me were that he went in as a labourer in construction and then went up to work in the northwest in the 1960s and 1970s before there was anything called FIFO, so he would be away for 6 to 12 months. But he endured quite an amount of prejudice growing up as a young man in Western Australia. He relays a story when he was on a bus going back to dwelling up to the work camp, and he was speaking to a young woman, and when he got back to the camp he was told by the boss that he shouldn't speak to her because he was Italian background. And I remember myself moving from the country to Armidale, to live in Armidale, surrounded by many British immigrants, and I endured a lot of racism, and that of course has shaped my views on racism. And actually, I know I shouldn't say this tonight, I was actually ashamed to be Italian back then because of being around that time in my little neighbourhood, probably the only Italian. The funny thing is, when I became around 2021, being Italian became groovy for the Italian fashion, the Italian clothing, and I thought it was quite ironical that a lot of the people that were teasing me and ridiculing me as a young boy actually ended up liking all things Italian. So we come here, as I said, from all different histories and experiences, and but the contribution that Italians have made to the West Australian society, whether it's in economics, politics, academia or sport or just community activities, is immense. And it's a very strong culture, strong history, and we should all be very proud of that history. And this is a very special day, of course, commemorating the formation of the Republic of Italy. But I think as all West Australians, most of us with Italian connections, we should also be very proud of the contribution the Italian society has made to Western Australia. And on behalf of my Italian parliamentary colleague Rita Saviotti and Paul Papalia and also Michelle Roberts and the Premier, I'd like to propose a toast. So any chance of me getting that drink there? So I'd like to propose a toast to Italy, a beautiful country that some of us are incredibly proud of. So please raise your glasses and toast to the Italian Republic and her people. Viva Italia! Thank you.